13 seconds. Hi, and welcome to the Giant Loop Garage Night. My name is Kris.
And I'm Nathan.
And we are coming to you live from our YouTube channel, For the Love of Knobs. Let's take a minute to talk about our sponsor, Giant Loop. So Giant Loop makes soft luggage and other products for all of your off-road adventures. They're based right here in our home state, and they're in Bend, Oregon, and owned by Harold Olaf Cecil. And we want to talk a little bit about what the Giant Loop Garage Night is. Garage Night was started as an in-person community service, and a few companies in Bend banded together: Giant Loop, 6-Volt Cycles, VR Garage, and Spoken Moto. Since COVID, it's been all online and virtual, so we can come and bring this night to you.
So I want to transition to telling you guys a little bit about who we are before we kind of dive into topics. My name is Nathan, and this is Kris. I have the recent opportunity to volunteer for the BDR organization. I'm a backcountry discovery route ambassador, and if you're not familiar with who the backcountry discovery route organization is, it's a non-profit organization who basically makes adventure bike and dual sport off-highway routes through states. They usually start on the south side of the state and work their way up north. They've been doing it for 10 years, and they've got 10 routes, so it's a route a year. And I'm actually having the pleasure of being on the scouting team. So I'm a specific team within the BDR who's involved in scouting new routes. So that's been a really big opportunity and big honor to work with the amazing people at the Backcountry Discovery Routes. And you know, they're all a bunch of really great people, super knowledgeable. So wanted to say hi to, looks like we got some folks chiming in and saying hi. Also, I'm kind of the team mechanic. So when something's going on with the bikes, we've whittled the number down to 4 bikes, which is kind of, as we found, the kind of best number to have. But when something goes wrong, although Kris is jumping in and starting to learn a little bit more about things, so it's been good. And then for the last 4 years, we've been doing this YouTube channel just kind of on the side as a fun little hobby, and so we just appreciate all of you guys who are subscribed to the channel and give us nice pieces of feedback, and also we really appreciate anybody who decides to subscribe to the channel.
For sure.
Let's tell them about you, Kris.
Let's see, I'm Kris. I'm on the Revit women's team. I do some work with Women ADV Writers magazine. Been so busy in other things I haven't gotten to write for them for a while, but hoping to get back into that. I'm also a BDR ambassador. I love going to events and talking to people about motorcycling whenever I can, and I'm a beginner off-road riding coach. You want to talk a little bit about the channel, or did you?
Sure, we can talk a little bit about the channel. It's like I said earlier, it's just been kind of a fun side hobby thing. We had a couple of momentous moments in the recent past. We hit 1,000 subscribers, which is kind of cool. It unlocks some cool community features that we can kind of interact with people a little more. And then also, we actually were recently able to monetize the channel through some great subscriber numbers and views on the channel. So kind of helps pay for the cameras and lenses and stuff. But so we appreciate you guys subscribing to the channel. It really makes a difference. It's not a big revenue stream. It's a little tiny one, but every little bit is fun to kind of expand our camera gear with.
To reinvest, for sure. And our topic for the evening, we want to talk about exploring Oregon's backcountry. So please jump in at any time with questions as you think of them. We want to talk about what to pack, what kind of bikes are good for Oregon's backcountry, and some of the exceptional places that you'll see in Oregon. So let's jump in. The reason we love this topic is a few years ago, we live in Oregon. And a few years ago, we realized we were driving a long way and seeing beautiful things in other places, and we wondered, what's in Oregon? I wonder if there's beautiful places there.
Yeah. When you live here, it's kind of like, well, maybe we should, explore our own state instead of going to somebody else's state all the time. So yeah, we kind of made a pact a couple of years ago. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, we said, hey, next year, this is obviously during the off season. Next summer, let's do all the Oregon exploring. We don't need to leave our own state to have a lot of fun on the bikes. So it actually has turned into like a multi-year thing now. We're still exploring Oregon. I think we've got, we did the Wallowas recently, and the Cascade Discovery Route is one of our more recent videos we just posted. We didn't do the whole thing though, so there might be a part 2. I'm not promising. And you know, we haven't done all of the Oregon Off-Highway Vehicle Association routes. We've only done a couple of those, so that would be fun to do. And then there's another area. It's the Steens Mountains. It's like, you know, the place to go for dual sports in the state, and we just haven't done it yet. So we need to get out there.
Yeah, definitely. And Oregon was actually the original inspiration for the BDRs, which, yeah, you want to tell more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I apologize. I don't know all of the history on this, but I'll give it to you the best I know it, and it may be wrong. But Oregon Off-Highway Vehicle Association is the current organization who kind of has, you know, tracks, BDR style tracks in the state. And that all started about, I think it was about year 2000, somewhere in there, through like a state grant or sponsorship through the BLM or something like that. And allowed them to kind of scout out these routes and mark them out for people. And kind of how it started was Paul Gillian and a couple other people, I can't remember who all was involved in that, went and rode Route 5, which is kind of like the big premier route of Oregon BCDRs. And they filmed it, put it on YouTube, and then some other folks who were also into four-wheel drives and off-road and stuff like that saw the videos on YouTube. And then those same folks, most of them are still involved in the actual formation of the BDR organization as we know it today, and which is pretty cool to be able to have so many you know, awesome people involved in the BDR. And then they in turn formed the Washington Backcountry Discovery Route, and that was the Washington State one was the first one. So.
Yeah. Just want to say. I love the whatever you pack, you got to pack it in giant loop. We totally do.
Yeah, obviously.
For sure. So as far as what types of bikes you use to explore Oregon, well, depends what kind of adventure you want to have. Oregon has so much available. We tend to prefer ourselves the off-road, everything's packed on the bikes, Jeep trails, multi-day adventures, so that's what we go for. But we also have dirt bikes, and you can have a huge adventure loading a dirt bike in a truck and visiting different OHVs, or even just going to one HV for days.
Yeah, I mean, exploring Oregon on a motorcycle, I mean, you've got all kinds of range of bikes that you could go out and explore Oregon with, but the stuff that we like to do is the adventure dual sport type riding. And with that, you know, we've got the bikes loaded fully down with luggage and gear and everything, and that's why Giant Loop luggage makes so much sense. You know, we're supporting an Oregon-based company who's makes awesome products and stands by them too. So we can't recommend Giant Loop enough for that kind of thing. You know, but it's also really cool to be, you know, that sort of vulnerability feeling of, you know, hey, I'm on the bike out in the woods by myself or with some of my friends, and if something either happens to the bike or happens to me, or, you know, I've got to figure out it, I've got to rely on my wits to kind of get me out of the situation, you know. So there have been a number of times we've been out in the woods trying to figure something out, and fortunately we haven't had any major issues, but I mean, we have had to have JB weld some cases, and you know, Eric's flat tires, he's known for getting flat tires.
Sending people to the hospital.
Yeah, I guess there's some minor injury stuff, but nothing too terrible.
No.
But that's kind of what we like to do in Oregon is you know, get out on the bikes and do some moto camping out in the wilderness. And you know, what's really great about Oregon is that there's all these opportunities to get out there and I don't know, we call it wild camping. It's not dispersed camping. It's like, you know, BLM or state forest land, and it's so remote. You can get out there and just camp, you know, wherever you want. So that's one of the great parts about Oregon. You know, in some other states, that may not be possible to just, you know, find a spot in the woods and just camp there because, you know, either it's private land or it's not allowed, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So yeah, Travis says Royal Enfield, Himalayan, KLR 650, and Critter Moto. When you get down here with your CRF, you better look us up. We want to ride with you.
Travis guys, KLR 650. You know, I started out adventure riding on a KLR 650, and you know, it's a great bike. You know, as many people kind of turn their noses up at them. I totally get it. I've owned one for several years, and I wouldn't have sold it if I had not wanted to upgrade to something else and needed the cash to do that. So yeah, KLRs are good bikes. Chris and I actually got a chance to ride the CRF 250L, each of us in Hawaii. And what did you think about it?
That was a really fun bike. It's just, yeah, it's the perfect bike for Hawaii because you're not going anywhere fast. You just want to hang out and watch the sunset on the beach.
Yep.
Yeah. So right now we're both KTM owners.
Yeah, it's kind of weird too because, over the years I've been kind of a little bit, how would you say it?
We rode with a lot of people whose KTMs didn't work when we wanted to ride with them.
Yeah, I don't want to put down any brands. I think all modern motorcycles are amazing. And at the same time, I have a lot of impressions from other people's KTM ownership that they weren't very reliable. And so I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype at all. Our KTMs have been extremely reliable. So we've enjoyed owning those, and for me, it's been an amazing opportunity to be able to own a 790 Adventure, which was an awesome motorcycle.
Yeah.
I think Chris is a little jealous.
It is my dream bike. I got to ride it in Canada, and it was amazing.
You haven't yet really rode in mine, though.
I know, because you like it too much, and you won't let me on it.
Can't scratch my new Touratech crash bars.
Right.
They cost too much to fix.
So I'm on a KTM 690. Harold just asked about the bikes we're riding now. I have it lowered because it's just easier to get on and off of because I use it both as a daily driver as well as my adventure bike. And Nathan just mentioned he's on his KTM 790.
And your 690 is the new one, not the old one.
Right.
It's the dual counterbalanced motor.
Yeah, they're both awesome bikes. And what I loved about, I was on a DR 650 when I got the KTM 690, the way it feels, it's so confidence inspiring with the suspension and the way the weight is. I tried things that I wouldn't have tried on the DR. I would have just gotten off the bike and either had somebody else do it or walked the bike. So.
And tell us about your experience transitioning from a DR to the 690. Like, what are some of the key factors that people may have who have never tried that difference, have never tried somebody's 690 or other European style motors, brand European origin motorcycle? What are people missing out on that you would put words to that would maybe say, hey, you've only tried maybe Japanese bikes, and what's the big difference in feeling? And I think you just described the confidence piece.
Yeah. I think the other piece that stood out right away was how smooth the motor was, because I remember my first commute home from work. I won't say how fast I was going when I looked down at the speedometer, but I thought I was going the speed limit. And
it was much above.
It was, and so I slowed down.
Allegedly in Mexico?
Yeah. It's amazing how much power the bike has with just a really small twist of the throttle and just how smooth it felt. So that was amazing. And then, I talked about the confidence inspiring the suspension, and I was a little bit nervous about it. I thought the bike might be a bit of a princess, so I was scared to drop it. And the very first weekend we took it off-road, I launched it off of a cliff and we recovered it and rode it the rest of the day.
Oh my gosh,
and I was
so funny.
no longer worried about the reliability of the bike.
And, aside from a couple of really minor issues, it's been super reliable. Which has been great. I mean, knock on Chris's head. But it's been a really good bike. What other things would you use to describe the 690 for you, and what ways that you transitioned from the DR to the 690 that you feel like it was a big upgrade?
The other piece about the suspension was that on the DR there was a lot of bucking. Like I felt like I was on a horse that was unhappy with me with the types of riding that I was doing and the speed I was doing it. And with the KTM 690, it just wants to stay on the ground unless you ask it to leave the ground. So that's been really helpful. What else has been different? I was gonna say, are you reaching for something specific that I've told you that I've forgotten since? Or is it just that?
I'm just trying to give folks an impression of what those KTMs feel like in comparison to the Japanese style bikes.
Gotcha.
The sort of the old, I don't know, some people call it dinosaur. I don't want to offend anybody, but
No.
dinosaur tech, you know,
Been around a while.
the 80s
Yeah.
carbureted, you know, standard forks and, you know,
Yeah.
pretty like entry level suspension.
Yeah.
And there's a piece that maybe you didn't touch on, and that is the center of gravity of the bike.
Sure. It feels a lot lower, or is a lot lower.
Well, I don't know if it feels lower, but it definitely feels lighter.
Yeah.
You know, when you get that bike tipped over and you're trying to like, you know, bulldog your way through something, or you've got a foot out and you're trying to like dig for traction or whatever. With the DR, for me at least, the tank being up so high and kind of like the center of mass being up so high, you know, it really did feel like that it was much easier to get the bike tipped over and kind of lose control of it. Whereas the newer, you know, like the European style KTM, I don't know, I'm going to say KTM. The KTMs that we own at least feel a lot lighter when you kind of get that lower speed maneuverability.
Yeah. And then you can speak a lot more to the 790, but the biggest thing I noticed with that when I got on it is the way, I don't know how they did it, but it feels like it leans you up in the position over the handlebars that you want to be in to ride.
Sure.
It's magical.
Yeah. So I'll talk really quickly about the 790, and then we can move on to what's our next topic? Packing. All right, what to bring with you. But Chris is always surprised because I bought the 701 and without test riding any ever. And then I did the same thing with the 790, and you know, I watched all the reviews and I kind of, you know, read all the things that people thought about, you know, the shortcomings and what they liked about him. And you know, for me, it's just much easier to look at a motorcycle and visualize what it's going to feel like to ride than maybe Kris is. She's insistent; she has to test ride it before she, you know, because she can't look at a bike and say, "Oh, that's what it's going to feel like to ride," based upon, you know, the weight and the power and, you know, kind of what you've read about it. So it's much easier for me to jump into something like that. So I did sell the 701. Somebody got a really great deal on a really awesome bike that I kind of miss, but I also really love the 790. It's a different experience riding the 790 Adventure. It's definitely the 701 felt more like a dual sport, and the 790 is a full-on adventure bike. You know, it's much wider, it's much heavier, but it's also much smoother and comfortable on the highway. And I found that honestly, I was doing a ton of highway on that bike, you know, for some of the BDR stuff that I'm doing, and you know, just kind of the adventures that were going on, you know, exploring Oregon a lot and other states as well. You know, we've stopped trailering so much. We're actually transitioning back to just riding the bikes where we want to go, and I think a lot of that, you know, is a lot easier on a bike like a 790 or a 1090 or, you know, any other brand, like, you know, full-size adventure bike. The downside, of course, there is that when you get them off-road, you know, those big bikes are heavier. So I actually did opt for the optional cruise control on the 790, which is highly worth the crazy cost that KTM wants for it. But if you can get a chance to get real cruise control on your bike, you should definitely do it because it's awesome for the highway.
For sure.
Yeah. So should we talk about what kind of questions? I sort of been talking and not looking at the chat. Cool. Thank you guys. Really appreciate the super positive comments. So
For sure.
Yeah. KTM has worked on their weight distribution. Yeah. They also tend to use you know, lighter components, which is good and bad. But yeah. And then, so should we transition on into talking about packing?
You bet.
Okay.
So similar to bikes, whatever kind of adventure you want to have is going to determine what you pack. I know some folks who pack a snack and a water backpack and stay in hotels and restaurants. But like we talked about, we love having everything on the bike and getting that genuine feeling of being in the woods and the wanderlust. So whatever type of adventure we're packing, we try to think in categories so we hopefully don't forget anything. That's after a lot of trial and error, maybe not doing that. But for camping and sleeping, Nathan might talk more about this, but we've definitely found that backpacking gear is the way to go. It's nice, it's lightweight, you can get a range of obviously cost options. We tend to go middle of the road. Do you want to talk more about your preferences?
Yeah. So I've done a little bit of it. I mean, I can't say I'm a backpacking gear expert because I just don't backpack. But so if anybody are watching this and you're actually a backpacker, I apologize ahead of time. But what I have learned a little bit about it is that, you know, there's sort of like a entry-level backpacking kind of weight and size of gear. There's kind of like a step up from that, so it's kind of like maybe your second season in backpacking, and Then there's kind of a middle, like a high end and an ultra high end. The ultra high end stuff is, I think, called Featherlight gear, and that stuff is crazy money. But somewhere further down from that, depending on your budget, it really helps if you can get a actual down sleeping bag rather than a synthetic material. The down has a better loft, and what that means is that the goose down that they put in there, when you compress it down in the compression sack, it gets a lot smaller, so you can fit it in your bags. We all want to know how to get the lightest possible, smallest luggage solution, and having a sleeping bag that compresses down really well with that goose down is important. One of the other tricks that I found out over the years is that this backpacking gear, often the tent poles are made for the size of a backpack. So they're 16 to 18 inches long, which in fact doesn't fit inside of a saddlebag or a help me out, a pannier bag.
Yeah.
So I've been actually replacing those with shorter poles that you can get on like different websites and stuff like Amazon, but that really helps get the gear down in size to be able to fit in, because if those tent pole sections are shorter, there's more of them, but they actually fit handily in your gear, and it gets that weight down low to the ground, keeps the center of gravity. Because you'll see some people who will put all their sleeping gear, their sleeping bag and their tent and all that stuff and all their clothes and everything in a top bag. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, if you can get that weight down so that it's down low, it really improves the center of mass and gravity of the bike. So those are some of the tricks. Other things that I found is that air mattresses really improve your comfort. Some people will take like a foam pad and roll it up, but that's probably only good for 1 or 2 nights before your back starts to hurt. We both run the backpacking air pads and actually air pillows too, because that just really makes it a lot more comfortable. And then honestly, I sleep as well in the tent, especially if it's not 20 degrees at night. I sleep as well in the tent as I do at home, and honestly my air pad is super comfortable.
For sure. Yeah. And I apologize, Kale, our adventure southbound, that there was a dead link. That must have been frustrating. I'm glad you found us. And we totally agree. Being comfortable while sleeping makes the adventure so much more fun, at least for me. Some people love, what do they call it, cowboy camping, like laying on a hammock.
Yeah.
That's not me. I like my tent and my sleeping pad and my pillow. Yeah, we also like to talk about with that, like bringing a headlamp. Sometimes we get into camp, we don't mean to, but sometimes we get in after dark.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to have a headlamp to help set up camp. The light on the bike, as Nathan will say, is absolutely blinding.
Yeah, you can trust your light on your bike, on your headlight, to illuminate camp well enough to completely blind you and not be able to set up anything. So
Sure.
Bring a headlamp, don't lose your
Yes.
headlamp.
We would do that.
Yeah.
And I saw, Jailu, Harold, you asked about like where we've been riding recently, and we can integrate that in as we're talking about packing. So he mentioned Applegate Trail, which is technically not in Oregon, but it's just south of Oregon.
Oh, okay. So why don't you tell them in detail what Applegate Trail is?
So the Applegate Trail was a part of the Oregon Trail, except there was a really treacherous part on the Columbia River where some people had died, I think, in the Applegate Party, and they wanted to find another route that was southern. So they actually went through the Black Rock Desert. And it's really cool because it's all off-road with various levels. Like you can go around the hard parts if you want to, but it wasn't, it had so much diversity. The scenery was diversity. When I heard desert, I figured it would look, like the desert, which is in my mind just sand and rocks. But it had grass and it had hot springs. And then the other cool part was it had little monuments on railroad ties or little quotes from people who had actually been on the Applegate Trail.
Yeah.
So that was super fun, and it's not very far from Oregon.
So we did that in a 4-day weekend, and we both took our we trucked to Bend. That's right. We only had 4 days to do it, and there was a lot of miles.
And there was a lot of snow.
There was snow. It was like out there was like 800 miles, something like that from our house. 600 miles. Do you remember?
600.
From our house to the start.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the far distance. So
Right.
we left early on a work night and loaded up the bikes, headed down to Bend, and actually dropped the truck there. And then rode it was like 400 miles the next day to the start.
Yeah.
We both brought our round the world panniers, and Kris has a couple of other bags, but I've got my Diablo Pro tank bag, and that really is just for camera gear for filming our episodes. It's got the drone and the cameras in there. So I really have only got the round the world panniers to bring everything I need with me. Kris, you've got the Klamath tail rack, the little, what's the little tank bag called?
Little tank bag
Oh
called?
my gosh, my brain is totally gone.
I forget the names.
Anyway, she's got the new little, the hotness. Come on, help us out.
I love
Your
that
help.
thing.
And the
oh my gosh, the handlebar bag.
yeah.
The zigzag.
Zigzag,
My
yeah,
other
that's it.
favorite thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Between all that stuff, and how this relates to packing is that we were going out in the desert, so we knew we had to have everything from cold to hot, because the temperature goes crazy hot, and it wasn't too bad. I think it was like mid 80s during the day.
Buck and roll.
The buck and roll bag, yeah. And then at night it got down to probably upper 30s,
Yeah, it was
something like
cold.
that. Yeah, it was pretty chilly. So we had to have everything with us packed to kind of have that big 45, 50 degree temperature swing. We had to have all of our water with us.
For sure.
Kris needed extra gas on that actually, because her 690 always runs out of gas.
And thanks to Harold, he got us an extra gas bag.
Yeah, we sort of last minute got an extra gas bag. So we had
used
2 gallons worth of gas, and we
Yeah.
used it all. The section, and I'm going to forget the town names because it's been a couple months, but where we started to Cedarville, California, I think was the end of it. I want to say it was 215, 220 miles, 220 miles?
Right around there.
Yeah, something like that. So you had to use both of your gas bags on that one.
For sure.
Which worked out perfectly. I'll give you guys a tip. The round the world panniers, the pockets that have the roll tops, they're kind of, depending on if you put it in the front or the back, but they've got the roll top and the buckle. You can actually fit a 1 gallon gas bag in those tops, and hold the end out and actually fill the gas bag with gas while it's kind of in that roll top. That way you're not having to stuff them in there and everything. It actually ends up working out really well.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, and as far as favorite foods, there's a fun discussion going on. We've been joking for a while now that we are going to do a food tour of Oregon or any state we travel to, because I love finding the little restaurants in the small towns. I think I like calling it my ethical duty to keep the small towns alive, but really I just like good food. But when we talk about packing for food, we always bring water, an ultralight camp stove, is that what you'd call it? Anyway, a backpacking stove, and a way to boil water. And then we bring our dehydrated food with us, as well as a bunch of snacks.
Yeah, we're big Mountain House people.
Yeah.
Mountain House is
Goodness
awesome.
for Mountain House.
Backpacker's Pantry makes some really good pad thai though.
So good.
Yeah.
But we do like to stop for lunch if we're in a town, or if it's close to dinner time and we're in a town, we'll stop for dinner.
Yeah.
I would go to breakfast too, but
The nice thing about stopping for food is it's food you don't have to bring with you on the bike, and it's water that you can save for your next water stop.
for sure. Yeah.
So we've got some questions. Shall we jump into a couple of those?
Yeah.
I think we told, favorite moto travel foods, definitely eating out. Finding smaller restaurants that we can find on the way. We still need to get to Cowboy Dinner Tree. If you're in Oregon, totally do that. So we want to do that. I think that's probably my next moto travel food experience.
Sounds good.
But
I'm down. I think they serve you like a half a chicken and a side of a cow. So
yeah, no,
should
I'm
be
down
good.
for this. That sounds really good, actually. Okay, so another question we got here. Where am I missing?
Drone and Canada.
No, here. What's the total weight of your top bags and panniers when loaded? Kayla, Adventure Southbound. I tend to carry more of the heavy stuff now that I've got the 790. And honestly, Kris is pretty short, so having a heavy bike is not advantageous for her. So I want to say my round the world panniers are probably about 22 to 25 pounds a piece.
Yeah.
And then Kris's are more like,
Mine are down to 17 now.
yeah.
Yeah, each side. So.
Yeah.
And then as far as like the top case, it's got snacks. I get hungry.
We call it Kris's pantry. The Klamath tail rack is her little pantry, so
Yeah.
that's been fun. What other questions do we have here? Let's see. Giant Loop. What drone and camera gear do we carry? I can talk about that a little bit, as I think I'm more of the camera person.
Mm-hmm.
Are you? Would you say that's true?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm okay to say that. Anyway, so
I carry what you tell me to.
Kris has found a camera that we own that she can make work. This is great. I love that. She's not a technical person when it comes to cameras, but she does get some pretty darn good shots with that Osmo Pocket.
Yeah.
If you're interested in a handheld gimbal camera that does really great videography for a really good price, that Osmo Pocket's a pretty good deal. So anyway, I tend to carry a mirrorless DSLR with me. Most of my interview shots are with that. It's a little bit much to pull out if we're talking about doing like ride-bys and video of bikes, but I do try to get it out for the pictures that we want to like stage. One of the things that, I don't know, if you get a little bit more involved in videography, you kind of realize that, and I come to accept in kind of a sad way, is that a lot of the stuff you see is actually kind of rehearsed and staged, and I'm just telling you guys all the behind the scenes stuff here, but we try to, as we're going along on a ride, we try to say, okay, this is what the video is going to be about, this is what we're going to talk about, these are some of the interview questions we're going to have. And when somebody sees something beautiful like this landmark or that landmark, we're actually all going to stop, we're going to turn around, we're going to set up the tripods and the cameras and all that. It's kind of a different experience from just going out there and just kind of having a ride, and kind of like just letting it all soak in. And that kind of brings me to the drone, which is kind of a love it or hate it, no, hate it and hate it kind of situation.
But I love the footage.
Yeah, the footage is great. Maybe I need to do something different, but our drone, sometimes it disconnects and all this stuff, and it's a pain. It's not a pain. I love the footage. Yes. It's a process to make it happen. So you really have to plan about an hour per day of just doing drone stuff.
Right.
Tell me about your side of the drone.
So many U-turns.
Yeah.
And it's usually like we try to find good wide open spaces, but still like U-turns off-road are not my favorite thing. So occasionally it's a U-turn and a bike drop, and then he's like, now the room's out of batteries. So
the drone only lasts for about 20 minutes, and we have about 18 of those of Kris doing U-turns, dropping her bike, picking up her bike.
And it's always the bike drop that's on the footage, not the bike pickup.
Yeah.
He's all done by then.
Yeah. Well, I've decided she's already dropped it. I mean, I'm going to go shoot some scenery footage or something.
Yes. So, and then, I do carry the Osmo Pocket. I really prefer the cell phone in terms of like convenience, because it's just an all-in-one package, but the sound on the cell phone isn't as good. The gimbal really helps with the Osmo Pocket, so that's been great to have. And then I usually
for the stability.
Yeah. And I usually have a helmet cam with me, and I have started carrying a DSLR, but I'm not as good about using it because it's kind of fiddly, right? Like I have to get the way I get off my bike is I have to get my kickstand down. Well, no, I have to get off my bike and get my kickstand down and get the camera out, and it's so that's our camera gear story.
Yeah, and also, finding ways that make it work well for us. For example, Kris is really into having her action cam be a one-button situation. So she's got the record button to press, turns on the camera, starts recording, and then when she's done recording, and by the way, guys, if you're doing helmet cam stuff, it's really great if you record for your video editor. I'm telling you, for your editor. If you record like something that's technical or hard, or something that's really pretty, and highway usually doesn't end up looking all that good, but you want about 30 seconds to a minute of that helmet cam footage, and then you just press the record button if you got it in one button mode, and then it just shuts off, stops recording, everything's good to go. So that's really helpful. My action camera is a Hero. I just upgraded to a Hero 8 Black, and that's a great camera. I've really, really liked it. I think when the 9 comes out, I'll probably get that. She'll get my 8.
Come on, 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of all the camera gear that I can think of.
And then we had a question about mileage
Oh.
goals. So when we're doing a BDR...
Oh, let's read the question back.
Yeah.
What is your mileage goal per day when doing a BDR? Well, I think if we had goals per day, it would be smart. We're not very smart.
I think we're spontaneous.
We're spontaneous. We like writing a lot. Sometimes that makes it into like 2 sections a day.
It does. Yeah. Like if we're doing a BDR, I think mentally I usually assume we're going to do a section, which usually is what, 1 to 150 miles, 100 to 150 miles, about. But yeah, last year on the California BDR, I think we did a 300-mile day accidentally because everything just went so well and we were having so much fun, and then there was no camping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I generally think like 150 miles, if it's a mixture of easy and really challenging, is about a good average.
It depends on how many drone footage sequences that you want to get.
That too. Yes. Yeah.
How many flat tires you get.
Yeah. Yeah, there was the day I got
how many selfies
6
you take.
flat tires.
Oh my gosh.
That was fun. We didn't do a lot of mileage that day.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So let's see. Other questions?
I think we're caught up.
Sweet.
Yeah. Hello, everyone who's recently tuned in. Shall we move on? What have we not covered yet? Should we go back to packing?
Sure.
Okay, let's go back to packing. So, obviously, this is something to think about when you've got soft luggage. Hopefully, you've got giant loop luggage. You're going to keep your clothing pretty minimal, and I think what was really interesting, about that is that Josh on his first BDR trip. Oh my gosh! Tell the people at home about Josh's reflection on California.
He did a really good job of listening to a lot of what we said, but I think he thought we were going to be literally in the middle of nowhere, and there was going to be just a gas station pump, right? And so he brought so much food. Like I think he brought enough food to feed all of us for like 2 weeks.
It was great.
Yeah, it was
we
great.
had backup food, and I didn't have to carry it.
Although we got to eat out like every single day.
Yeah.
And then his other reflection that he told us later was like, I did not need all those clothes. So we tend to I think Nathan and I both go to the other end where I pack a lot of layers. I like to be warm enough. It's really important to me. So it may look like I have a lot of clothes, but I have like one change. Like I don't even have a full change of clothes. I just have layers.
I usually bring socks, underwear, and a warm layer. And if it's a warm layer that I can wear on the bike, even better. So I'm a big fan of layering up as you need to and layering off. So if it can be a dual purpose layer, meaning that, if it's a warm layer I can put under my jacket, I'm going to wear that same jacket at night. So really thinking about how to optimize the clothing that you're bringing, because it really does add up in size. The other thing is to roll your clothing instead of folding it. That helps reduce the size. And then synthetic materials are a lot better for moto camping than cotton. Probably a lot of you know that already, but the moisture wicking capability, it just usually doesn't smell as much. These normal things.
Yeah. I always recommend bringing a swimsuit too. I think I've done more swimming on BDRs than I have anywhere ever. So, and then shoes are really nice.
Like sandals, flip-flops, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we've got a question here. Chris Rippey says, advice for the first timer on the California BDR. Broad question, I know. Well, if you haven't seen As the Magpie Flies video, Amanda's video about doing the Cabder, it should probably not be your first BDR unless you're a really, really skilled rider. So that would be my first thing I would say about the Cabder. The film makes it look pretty easy, but it's actually very technical. There's a lot of deep sand. There's a lot of rocks, loose rocks, so it's pretty darn technical.
Yeah, I would say definitely practice skills. And if you're from California, it would make sense if parts of it were your first BDR, but I would think of it in parts. Yeah. I would do like section 1. Actually, I would start with section 1.
Yeah, and section 1 has Indian Pass Road to it, so just skip Indian Pass Road altogether. Though there are some harder sections than Indian Pass Road. That's that 8 miles of deep sand that you see in the movie. There are actually harder parts, deeper sand, longer periods. They just, for whatever reason, didn't make it into the film, which I thought was quite funny because, I love the deep sand. That was my jam.
Yeah.
That was all about it.
For sure.
I remember having a moment on the California BDR where we're going through Indian Pass Road, and I'm going, I don't really care how Chris is doing right now. And that's a really rare thing for me because I'm always worried about what Chris is doing. I am just going for it, man.
I was just back there going, baby birds, baby birds.
Yeah. So specific advice around doing the California BDR, I would say pack as light as humanly possible and bring the knobbiest tire you can stand riding on the road.
Mm-hmm. And definitely watch I think the official BDR video. I thought it did it justice, but I have heard people say that it was actually harder than it was in the video. So I think the original BDR video, our video series might be helpful, and then Amanda as the Magpie flies, I think are good preparations for that.
All right, so we have another question. What BDRs have you ridden, and which parts have been your favorites? Okay, so we have done Washington a number of times. In sections and in complete, just because it's like our backyard for us. And Washington is amazing. It's the original BDR. It's the first one from the actual BDR organization, and it's got quite a breadth of skills. You know, you go from day one or section one, you're Hood River, and it's like pretty tame, and you know, Lake Tackalack is beautiful, and you know, the ice caves are cool and all that stuff, and then like day two, it like ratchets up to like 11 for all day. I mean, like all day long, you're in the rocks and climbing up and going down and steep, and oh my gosh, it's pretty darn technical. I don't know how those guys on the big 1200s do it. Like, I think the last time we were coming the other way, so there's, I don't know, I cannot remember all the names. I think it's Tanum Ridge, but I could be wrong. There's people call that Babyhead Hill, but actually Babyhead Hill it's Manistash or Tanum. I can't remember. I think Tanum is Babyhead Hill, and Manistash is the one people call Babyhead Hill. Anyway, there's two Babyhead Hills on Washington BDR. The first one you come to by the radio tower is pretty darn technical. And last time we were coming down it, and this guy there was a group of guys waiting at the bottom, and there was a guy on a 1200 GS, and man, once we got down, he straight launched his fully loaded 1200 into the bushes, and I was like, whoa, I'm getting out of here before I have to call a chopper.
He was fine.
He was fine. So anyway, and then the rest of it is kind of like a little bit more, you know, sections 2 through 6, I think it is. Just, you know, a nice BDR format of like, you know, scenic and beautiful, and a couple of technical sections here and there. And, you know, it's kind of the normal BDR recipe of, you know, a tiny bit of highway to connect you into a town, a nice, easy, beautiful gravel roads, a couple of techno sections here and there. So it's kind of the normal recipe after that. Other BDRs that we've ridden, we did part of Utah, the northern half of Utah. We have still yet to go back and do the southern half.
So want to though.
Yeah, it's on the list. Obviously, we've done the California BDR South. That, as we talked about earlier, is probably up there with. I haven't done Northeast, but it's probably up there with Northeast as being either the most technical or second to Northeast, from what I hear.
Yeah, I think that's all the BDRs we've done. We would definitely like to do them all, but it is that, like, how do you get your bikes there and get that much time off of work for us, because we both have those day jobs.
Yeah. And then as far as the OOHVA, the Oregon Off-Highway Vehicle Association, we've done Route 5, which is the New Pine Creek to Walla Walla, you know, north-south, big one. And then we've done, was it Route 4, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
4.
Seneca to Sisters. And that one is wonderful. It's an easy one on the weekend. You know, if you're from Oregon and you've got a 3-day weekend, totally do Route 4. It's, you know, there's a couple of technical sections here and there, but for the most part, it's just gorgeous.
For sure.
Yeah, and then we're actually planning on doing, is it Route 6 coming up soon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
So we'll see. I hear that one's nice and tame, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. Mostly I just want to see the beach. Like, do off-road and beach.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done for BDRs. What was our favorite parts? Well, I talked about the deep sand on California. I know this is weird. Like, I just loved it. It was so much fun. I felt like crazy. It's almost like jet skiing or something, you know?
Yeah.
You know that feeling?
Getting up on a plane and keeping it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you? What were your favorite parts?
I really liked Coliseum Mine. Like, I liked the really challenging hill climb up there. I loved just spiraling down into that really pretty area.
Yeah. And how many times people got to drop their bikes?
On the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. In Utah, oh my gosh. So the White Rim Trail is not on the BDR, but that was so much fun.
Oh my gosh.
I loved the White Rim Trail.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my
Shifter
favorite parts.
too.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of Utah was we were on the BDR and there was snow and Google rerouted us. And that was so much fun because we had no idea where we were going and we ended up like in the middle of a field and it sent us up a rain rut. It was just the best. And then getting to have, what kind of milkshakes was it? We had milkshakes at Bear Lake. That was the best.
Everybody was closed. There was like 10 minutes left, and then the restaurant was like closing down shop, and we're like, milkshakes.
And burgers.
Yeah, after a hard day of digging the bikes out of the snow for like 4 hours straight.
We were so determined to make it. We didn't make it through
Yeah,
that area,
we
but
did
we
not.
were determined.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Somebody's got the real answer on Washington BDR. Clemens Mountain is the real baby head hill, but the last steep on Montana is rough and tough. Yep. Yeah. A lot of people get those two mixed up. So, is the Idaho BDR on our future list? It's not high on the priority list, although I hear it's really beautiful. Bill Whitaker, one of the board members in the BDR, keeps telling me we gotta get out there because he's from that area. I think, besides the scouting that we're doing, that I'm doing, it's hard to make time to actually ride a BDR just for the fun of it, because I'm dedicating so much time to like volunteering and filming for the channel and working on my bike.
I don't break it as much anymore.
So it's hard to make time, although we are planning. Hopefully California's going to let us in. We're planning a Southern California BDR trip again this fall, so that is going to be really fun.
Yeah.
We're going to do that one again rather than doing a new BDR. Why are we doing that?
That was your idea. I think there were a couple people that didn't get to go with us that wanted to go that now also can't go with us. So, yeah, I think the weather too. Like some BDRs you can't do in October, and just because of the times that we are allowed to ride based on work and things. California's open. Well, we'll see.
Critter Moto wants to know about getting a BDR in the BC area. Yeah, that's probably going to happen. The BDR organization's going. This is totally unofficial, but the BDR organization is going to run out of states. So
at some point.
There's a limited number. There's a limited number.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
I'm just curious, Critter Motor, isn't there a Trans-Canada trail? Anyway, carry on.
Any word on the South?
I saw it on the website, but I don't know.
What are we talking about?
The Southeast BDR?
Oh, the Southeast BDR. Okay, gosh, I'm silly. Southeast BDR is not on the immediate list, but it is on the list. It's coming in the future at some point. What other things do we have on the list here? Let's continue to talk about things to bring with you, because that was a big topic we wanted to talk about.
You bet.
Do you want to talk about tools and spares? Or do you want me to talk about that?
Sure. We like to recommend that if you're going on a BDR and you have bike maintenance to do, tires to change and all that, gather all your tools that you're going to take with you and make sure that you can do all of that maintenance with the tools that you have gathered, and then don't take anything out of that tool roll ever. There are some great small toolkits. The one that we have right now is Ride, Roll, Repair. No, Ride, Repair, Roll. There we go. It's R.
It's very pirate oriented.
And it's like the size of a couple of cell phones. It's so small, and it's.
This is our actual toolkit that we bring with us.
It's been great because it has modular. Would you call it modular tools? You can take them apart and use different things different ways. Cruise also makes a small toolkit, so most of what you need is in there. But again, test it before you go, because we were on the Oregon backcountry
Route 5.
Route 5, and I drowned my bike and found out we didn't have a spark plug removable part in there, but we figured something out.
Yeah, so her 690 has a 14mm spark plug, which wasn't including in the kit. It's like a normal 5/8, so we had to throw that in there.
Oops. Yeah, and then even if you have tubeless tires, we always say bring a front tube.
Yeah.
Because well, that was our learning from Eric.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Sometimes you could get a gash in your tire big enough to wear the little sausage things that go in there don't fit, or you might bend a rim, and not be able to get the bead to seal. So we always recommend, if you're tubeless like me now, to bring a front tube with you, and you can use that anywhere you need it. Also, bring a little bit of spare oil and some steel stick. We've learned this one the hard way. We had a case actually get a small enough hole that it was, wasn't a big issue, but we definitely were able to steel stick the case, patch it up, and then kind of refill the oil that we lost during that process. I'm not going to say how we lost it. But also, it's important if you ride a bike that either leaks a little bit or develops a leak or burns a little bit of oil, that you have a little bit with you, because sometimes you just can't, you can't find motorcycle oil in a lot of the remote places in Oregon. And actually gas sometimes is really hard to find in Oregon. It's surprising how many like little remote towns that used to have gas, and there's like this archaic, ancient, maybe the last time it was used in the early 80s kind of gas pump there, and you get your hopes up like, oh my gosh, there's going to be gas, and then you look at it and it's like, oh, this is like really not gas.
This has not been gas for a long time. Yeah, definitely. I love having the gas bag now, because we joke that I have gas anxiety because I have run out of gas a couple of times.
Yeah. This most recent trip that we did, Kris got to find out the absolute range of her tank. Well, I think you did 180 miles on that 690?
Yeah.
On the stock tank?
I was, coasting down hills, and just you can just barely touch the throttle.
Yeah, it was kind of weird too, because we had, I don't mean to pick on the Royal Enfield Himalayan guys, but we had one of those guys following with us, and I'm sitting here going, why isn't this guy passing us? And I look down and we're still doing 60, and I'm like, okay, that's probably why. Himalayans are great bikes.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, and we have another question in there. Pro tips and tricks for adventure motorcycling. What's something surprisingly handy?
Surprisingly handy. Actually, it's all in your brain. It's the experience and knowledge that you have of both working on your bike, the kind of the spares that you need to bring with you. I tend to rely more on ingenuity than I do on what things I've brought with me. So it's probably not the answer that you really want to hear.
Well, because that's an answer earned by experience.
That's true. That's true. It sucks. I think over the years we've whittled back what we're bringing with us quite a bit to where we're pretty light. And we've gotten really lucky to not have to rebuild a motorcycle from baling wire and duct tape. But we haven't bring things like master links with us. It's probably something we should do.
Yeah.
What else? Safety wire. We haven't been bringing that with us, but we have been bringing electrical fixing. Electrical tape and wire and crimpers and connectors and stuff. So there's just stuff you learn doing this thing. Tubes is definitely one that you cannot forget. That's just one.
Tubes and patches and the glue for the patches.
Yeah, and a pump or CO2 or some way to inflate the tire, because it's going to happen. You're really risking it if you don't bring some way to inflate your tire.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that we have the trail stand. I have a buddy who just will find the right size log or rock or something to hold his bike up, but because we've changed a number of flat tires, it is so nice to have an easy stand to pop up.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip a question here, and we're going to talk about safety, things that you should bring with you and plan around safety. So Kris, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. First, I want to say that neither of us is wilderness first aid trained. That's actually on our list of things to do, but we always try to leave a plan with somebody and have a point of contact. We joke that we try to make it my mom, because she would move heaven and earth to make sure that we both got home safely.
Yeah.
And then having somebody to check in with. We actually use a satellite messenger, but if you're not doing that at this point due to cost, making sure they know you're supposed to be in this town by this day, and they're gonna track you down if you don't get there within a certain range of time.
And you check in with them.
And then you actually check in with them when you get there. I know, one of the things that's, I don't know if they're on your mom, but hi. That was challenging is remembering to hit the all is okay button when we have the spot.
Yeah.
It's been really nice having the Garmin, what's it called?
The InReach.
Yeah. Because now we have two-way texting. We can say we're safe, and if somebody gets worried, they can actually text us, and we usually will get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about let's see, water filters.
Yeah, so the other thing that I wanted to mention before we talk about water filters is leaving a plan with somebody. So, I'm going from this place to this place, I'm going along this route, send them like a printout of the GPS tracks or some kind of reference of dates and where, so that they have a plan of when to expect you home or when to expect to hear from you. Because that way they can send search and rescue if, you're outside of that window. Water filters. I actually had a recent trip where I was out by myself and I got into a hairy situation where I was up on a ridge line and I didn't have very aggressive tires on and I didn't feel comfortable turning around on this basically cliff that I had just like dropped my bike into. So I looked down and I said, well, I could get my bike off of this ridge, and it turns out it was about a 2,000-foot drop. And it wasn't straight down, but it was pretty darn close to that. And I spent the better part of an afternoon getting my bike down this crazy cow trail with these huge rocks and, super duper steep. And I get to like the second to the last ridge line and I'm out of water and I'm totally exhausted and I'm starting to think of like, what kind of snacks do I have with me that have liquid in them so that I can somehow rehydrate. I didn't have a water filter with me. Fortunately, in this case, I was able to walk down and there was a ranch pretty nearby, so I was able to get some water. But if there's a stream anywhere within a few miles of where you run out and you're in trouble, you really need to have a water filter. If you don't have a filter, drink that water. You could get giardia or any other pathogens or parasites, but the likelihood of you like surviving through that infection process long enough to get rescue versus dying of dehydration, I think it's worth the risk. But definitely bring a water filter with you. It's cheap insurance in case you run out, especially in the backcountry. Bringing cash with you is important too. So there's a lot of places like remote country stores and that kind of thing where they just don't have a credit card machine or it's not working right now. So having a few $100 with you just in case of emergency is a really good idea. Sometimes if you want to buy gas at some places, they just don't take cards.
Or the power's out or the internet's out.
Yeah. Lots of things. Wearing all your gear, like just because it's 80 or 85 degrees doesn't mean that you need to wear the jersey instead of an actual, protection suit or, full on, motorcycle gear. Boots is, you should be wearing like full on motocross boots or some kind of, adventure dual sport, with buckles, keep those ankles and feet from getting injured. Fort9 did a recent video on newbie gear and what the chances are of, getting, I think it was like 53%. I'm going to misquote this, but I'm not sure. I think it was 53% of all injuries are like lower body or something like that. So boots is just huge,
So important.
Yeah, so important. And then bringing some first aid items with you, SAM splint, some gauze, adhesive bandage, getting some basic skills on, how to treat yourself or somebody else if they're hurt. We got time enough for a couple of quick questions, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
Let's see. Critter Motor's got a question of how many years have been adventure riding. I want to say it's been about, 6 years?
Yeah, I was going to say 5, 6.
5, 6 years. We rode dirt bikes a lot before that. So we transitioned from dirt bikes to dual sports, and that's kind of how we got involved in it. I actually taught Kris to ride, and instead of getting a street bike, which is what she wanted, we decided to get a dirt bike and go out and learn together. So that had its pluses and minuses.
It was great.
And I guess quickly, Kris, do you want to tell them about the few places that in Oregon you should come visit?
For sure. Crater Lake, of course. It is, the deepest lake in the world? Or
North America.
Okay, super deep. It's amazing. And Nathan always likes to say this, and he said this to me and I didn't understand until I was there. It's like you don't even realize how massive it is until you see it. Like the postcards can't do it justice. The Oregon coast is supposed to be the most beautiful coast in the world, maybe. I may overstate that, but it's really beautiful. we just did the Wallowas, and so I want to talk about Hell's Canyon. It's the deepest gorge in North America, 7,900 feet at its deepest part.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And the cool part about that was we did Dugbar Road, so we rode all the way to the bottom of the canyon in the Snake River, and then rode back out of it and got to come to an overlook all in the same day.
And see down where we were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was amazing. What are their favorites?
Oh, the historic Barlow Road, the Barlow Road Trail, definitely worth checking out. It's an awesome dual sport road. It's part of the historic Oregon Trail. Obviously, the Steens and Albert Desert are kind of like Oregon dual sport classics. Absolutely beautiful. And then the Painted Hills are a really nice place to go visit. So, some kind of, if you're thinking about visiting Oregon or you're from Oregon and you haven't gone to those places, we recommend checking those out.
Yeah, and the Painted Hills is great because you can go just on the gravel road near there, and then you end up in your own private Painted Hills where there's no tourists.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good dual sporting up in there. So.
Oh, Mad Moto ADV mentions that there is, of course, the backyard video.
Yeah, the
Oregon classic.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's a quick one though.
It's real fast. 1 to 3 days.
Okay. Anyway, we should probably think about wrapping this up. It's almost 9 o'clock now. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us on the channel. If you haven't subscribed to For the Love of Knobs yet, think about doing that. We'd love to have you come check out our adventures, and if you have a channel too, we'll totally subscribe your way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Giant Loop, so much for having us, and thank you all for just joining into the conversation. That was so much fun. It was great to hang out with you tonight. If you have more questions, anything that's come up for you during this, or anything that you have about adventure riding, you can find me at Free Spirit Pixie on Instagram.
And For the Love of Knobs on all social media. Yep.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great
Thank you,
night.
Harold. Thank you, Giant Loop. You guys are great.